All right, welcome everyone, and welcome to Africam4Good, brought to you by explore.org. My name is Russell Gerber, and thank you for joining us for a little discussion today on poaching and snaring. Today I'm joined by Craig Spencer, founder of the Black Mambas Anti-Poaching Unit. It is a great pleasure to have him on the show today. Thank you for joining us, Craig, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Russell, and thanks for accommodating me, sitting up here in the bush camp. So it's a marvel of modern technology that we can Zoom from these kind of conditions around the world. So yeah.
No, man, it's great to chat to you in person finally. So yeah, Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Russell, I started here 15 years ago. I've been the warden of this section that we're sitting in now. So the Greater Kruger Park is a multi-ownership model, and I'm in the private sector in a place called Baluli, and this is the Olifants West region of Baluli. So I've been here 15 years. I did my time as the head warden of Baluli as well over quite a few years, particularly through the rhino poaching pressure that we had. Before that, I was in the Western Cape, in the Overberg district. Primarily, my task there was to chase after what we call the prawn pirates in those days, the abalone and the rock lobster poachers. So that was 11 years of my life, and I came up here to exercise my kind of academic prowess and just fell into the rhino poaching shenanigans, and from the fire into the cooking pan.
Yeah, amazing, man. Those are some two seriously difficult conservation and anti-poaching problems in South Africa. I know, certainly from the marine aspect, to the rhinos, it must have been quite difficult, and
yeah,
I know for you, your big project when you did go back to the bush was, of course, the Black Mambas. So just quickly for our viewers, who are the Black Mambas and where do they operate?
Yeah, so the Black Mambas is a team of young women from the local tribal communities that sit on our western boundary, which is just over here. If I stand up on my viewing deck, I can see the firelights and what have you from the local community. And they are trained and deployed as the eyes and ears, or the first line of defense against poachers coming into the landscape or any antisocial behavior. Rhino poaching, of course, being the worst, but firewood collecting, anything like that. It's 9 years now in the making. So the first Mambas have been with me for 9 years. We started with 6 just to kind of demonstrate that the project worked. But the most significant thing is that they're all young women. They started with me at the age of about 18 years of age, when they finished their high schooling. And went through some rigorous training and have been deployed. So my dog has come to say hello. Hey, Sasha.
Excellent.
Yeah, now they're young mothers and aunties and are soon to be grandmothers, so their wives, mothers, aunties, whatever. That's the role that they play in the community.
Amazing. I mean, what a cool idea. And I mean, I know it's such a difficult thing for many of especially women in communities around the reserves to get involved in something like this, which is really cool. So you mentioned it's Baluli. That's pretty much your main operating area, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. We've also got what we call the buffer zone, just to the west, which is tribal land, primarily tribal land. And we have Mamba patrols also outside the reserve. So the idea is for early detection to be effective, we don't want to wait for the problem to climb over the boundary fence and end up in the Greater Kruger. We want to try and identify that problem before it gets here. So yes, we work inside Baluli and then also outside on the buffer zone.
Okay. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, along the same tracks, who are the bush babies and where do they operate?
Yeah, the bush babies are a critical component. Black Mambas wouldn't be near as effective if we didn't have the bush babies. And the bush babies, it's 1,300 school children in the 11 primary schools that exist in these little villages here. And the Mambas, so there's 7 Mambas that are dedicated to look after those primary schools, have lesson plans integrated in there. They've got a resource center. They teach all kinds of values and ethics and morals and life skills and so on. So it's not a rigid academic environmental education program where you teach you that the knob thorn grows in this kind of soil and the elephants eat this and so on and so on. That is obviously worked into it, but it's more about how to improve your lifestyles, how to use the internet, how to garden, to grow vegetables efficiently in a water deprived, we're in a semi-arid savanna here. You know, how not to pollute your river, that's your only source of water, so on and so on. And also to provide a happy place for kids. So they come and they get a meal every day if they attend the classes, which is probably why we have such a high occupancy rate in the classrooms, because we're providing that meal. We're providing a nice, safe, and stimulating learning environment. So there's cool pictures on the walls and ceiling fans to keep the classroom cool, and nice desks to sit at, and like really nice teaching aids. You know, so the kids want to come to school, and it's fun. And they go on camps, and they go into the Kruger Park on buses, and they get to interact with the mambas in the field, and you know, they go camping out in riverbeds and going on game drives and so on and so on. Trying to make it fun for them. But they need to understand what it is that their mothers and their aunties and so on are doing when they're on duty at work. So, you know, and then when they go home, instead of it's just mom talking about what she did when she was at work, the kids are actually engaged and they know about it as well. So it's been a force multiplier for us, not just to have the mambas working to save wildlife, but at the same time, the children are getting this input as well from the same communities. So it's boosted the output of the mambas to try and achieve our goals. I reckon if we took the bush babies out of it, it would take us like 3 generations to achieve our objectives with the mambas.
Amazing, man. Yeah, what a cool project. Have you had any bush babies make it through the ranks yet, or are we still in between generations at the moment?
Yeah, it's early days. You know, one of the challenges is, what do I do with the bush baby when they've exited the primary school level and they go to high school? You know, do we now say, well, we had a 3 or 4 year investment in that child, and now we just wave them goodbye, you know, and throw them back to the wolves? So we've got to try and find programs where they can exit the bush babies program and then still be involved somehow. So we've established now Scouts. Scouts is an international movement. It's a fantastic movement. It's got great moral codes and ethical codes and so on, and it ties in like almost 100% with what our message was and our ethos and so on. It gives a sense of identity and a sense of unity and all of these cool things. It's part of a global movement as well, the Scout movement. So we've got the Scout troops that we started now for the kids when they leave bush babies, they go to that. You know, we just got to keep thinking on our feet the whole time, because you don't want to lose that investment that you make into a child and then they go somewhere else and you don't see them for 10 years and they come back and still throw litter out the windows or whatever.
Absolutely right. I was a Scout, so I mean, what a cool way to keep it going. You know, I think as you say, huge international organization, and it must be something difficult, as you say. You're kind of getting through these young kids, getting them all excited, and then they disappear for a while. So yeah, man, good luck with that. I hope we see some bush babies out on the Black Mambas team in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. You know, just to build on the Scout thing, it's actually a great example. I was a Scout as well, and so many of my other colleagues that work in this arena, in the conservation arena, were Scouts as well in their youth. And it's an important lesson for us to learn. If you provide that opportunity for kids to get involved, to learn skills, to learn code of conduct, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, it actually does stay with you for life. And it can prepare you for life. That's why I think the Bush Babies program is so critical. It's whether it's Scouts or Bush Babies or something like that, you know. I think it's so important in those formative years. You can only expect so much from a parent who's, you know, struggling to put food on the table and might be working in the mines, or, you know, have a job in Mozambique or at a lodge for 21 days out of 30 days. They're not at home and so on. So that's where Bush Babies, Scouts, etc. can pick up the tab. And here we sit, you and I, you know, as ex-Scouts, you know, doing what we do for conservation and whatever our field of interest is. And I would say the Scouts have a huge role to play in that.
Awesome, man. Well, let's keep an eye. Hopefully we see them coming through in the future. So, Craig, let's get back to the difficult part of your job. Those are some of the wonderful things that you guys are working on. But, you know, for our viewers out there, what is snaring? You know, how would you explain it to the layman?
Yes, yeah, this is a good question, Russell. Thank you, because most people just want to talk about the rhino poaching with guns and bullets. You know, we lose more wildlife to snares than we do to poachers' bullets. You know, a rhino poacher, he has got one focal target, and he's coming in here with one plan in his mind, you know, and he's got a skill set. But a guy that's setting snares, it's the same kind of, it's like a wall of death, you know. The gill net is the analogy that I was going to use. When somebody sets a gill net, it's indiscriminate. There's no signboard on the gill net saying "otters beware," you know, and
Exactly.
petrels and albatrosses and everything don't get caught in this net, please. And it's the same with a snare. The poachers don't just put out one snare; they put up a wall of snares around a resource like a water hole or something like that. And every animal that walks past there is going to get caught. Even the thinnest snare that is set to catch a little warthog or an impala or a dake or some antelope is still going to kill a rhino or an elephant. If it gets around its foot, it will break off, it will fester, and it will kill even the biggest animal on this landscape. They're indiscriminate. They linger on the landscape for decades and decades. Nothing rusts out here. We're semi-arid. We know we're near the coast. They lie in the bush undetected, and during the drought period, when an animal moves through there for the first time in 10 years, gets caught. I'm going to ask quickly, Jay, can you find me a snare? I've got my boy here. Can you go and grab me a snare from outside? So it's a thin piece of wire. Well, they use materials that they can find lying around. You know, they sometimes will cut a piece of wire off the fence, or they'll use old telephone wire, or, you know, any scrap that's lying around. And they will make it into a loop. I'll demonstrate now when one comes along, and they anchor it to a tree, and they hold it up with little thin pieces of bark or whatever. They even set snares for giraffe. So you can't just be looking down here for snares the whole time. You also have to be looking up into the trees where they set snares for giraffes. You can catch anything in a snare: a bird, a giraffe, a buffalo, a rhino. The rhinos have succumbed to snares, lions, wild dogs, etc. It's not as clinical as shooting an animal with a gun as a poacher. Sure. An animal in a snare goes through agony, and it's the worst possible way to die, especially if that snare is broken off and around the neck and it festers, and, you know, for months that animal is suffering and then eventually dies of starvation or septicemia or something like that. Snaring is a huge concern to us. It's kind of been overlooked during the rhino poaching era because we were too busy chasing after ghosts in the darkness, as I like to call it, because it's so hard to catch a rhino poacher. Here are some snares. I mean, every day the mambas are pulling out snares and logging their location and that, so that we can do follow-up work there. These ones are a little bit tangled, but you kind of get the gist of it. It's wow. I'm glad I'm not an animal. I think I might have caught myself now. I poached myself in a snare. So I don't know.
I actually stepped into a snare as well when I was first started guiding, in my first year of guiding, actually. Walking in on a game trail, and it had surely been there for years because, as you say, we had a extremely powerful anti-poaching team, very strong borders around the reserve. It was a private reserve, private sector, as you mentioned, and yet still we were tracking lions for guests, and I happened to step into them. As you say, it's not a trap per se, but it just tightens like a noose, which is what you're trying to demonstrate there, essentially.
And I'm struggling, but you can imagine an animal that does not have opposable thumbs. I'm struggling with opposable thumbs and a high level of cognitive thought process available. And, I'm going to end up slapping myself in the face. So this is we call this a cable snare. So they've taken 2 strands of normal fencing wire and they've doubled it up to give it extra strength. So the intention here was to catch something quite big. And there's the noose. It's just a very simple knot, and the animal will walk through or put its foot through, and then as it carries on walking, this just slides and zaps it, So, sometimes the mambas will call it jewelry. They've seen a zebra with a bangle or with a necklace on it, and then we know. This other end will be anchored to a tree.
Yeah.
And it doesn't provide much opportunity. But
so what do the mambas do when you find a snare? I mean, so you mentioned you will log where you found it, obviously the date, time, and where it was. What from there? I mean, where do you go from there?
Yeah, so that appears immediately in the operations center. So everything the mambas do is recorded in real time. You can see where they are. You see what they can see. It's a bit like the body cam kind of thing. And that snare will then come up on the screen. And every snare that they found on their patrol, and it will build a little cluster. So you can see, oh my goodness, there's a snaring cluster there. Then they remove the snares, obviously. So they'll carry a little Leatherman or side cutters or something, and the snares come off. We want to prevent the animals from getting caught rather than lie in the bush now for weeks on end and wait for somebody to come and retrieve the snares, because we're going to have a tough time in court proving that that guy was the original guy that set the snares, you know, or that his intentions were poached. And then at the same time, especially during COVID, there is an economic crisis in the communities. And somebody that's going out there to set snares to put food on the table for his family or whatever, you know, we don't want to go down that road. It's going to create a socio-political problem, I think, for the Mambas to operate in the area. The idea, and it seems to have worked out quite well, is that if you find a snare, you remove it. So we search and destroy all poacher traps and evidence or whatever. Their camps, we find bushmeat kitchens. So, you know, the snaring thing can be syndicated as well. And they drop off big teams of guys and they set out hundreds of snares. And then they camp there in the bush and you find these kitchens and it looks like the hanging gardens of Babylon, you know, with all the dead meat hanging in the trees and, you know, the flies, and they've got the skins out there and the salting processing and all that kind of thing is going on. Destroy it, burn it, get them off the landscape. When they come back again, they go, oh my goodness, what a waste of time. I set all these snares, I went to all of this effort and what have you, and I got zero reward. So we're just displacing that crime. I know we're not solving the crime. We're displacing it off this landscape, though. And in the time that the Mamba started here, 9 years ago, the snaring was at an industrial level. We needed flatbed trucks to remove the snaring material. We struggled to find scrap metal dealers to take it off our hands. You know, that's how many snares we found, and bushmeat kitchens and so on. Once we cleaned up, and then we just hit the same areas time and time again. Every day you're on patrol, you go past there, you have a look. Are they back? Are they back? Are they back? No, they're not. Very good. So they've gone somewhere else, but at least it's not here. I know that's a little selfish of us to say, but at the same time, we can't be taking fathers, uncles, or brothers or whatever out of the community and putting them in jail for trying to put food on the table, because that goes against, you know, it's such a difficult balancing act. We don't want poaching. We cannot condone poaching, but at the same time, we have to consider the impact on the community if you're removing all the breadwinners and the men, and the destabilizing, and how much pressure we're going to put on the young women, because they must now pick up the tab to look after the family in the absence of that guy. Plus, we also know how difficult it is to convict somebody for snaring. We have tried, and we decided, nah, it's just so much easier to just remove the snare, save the animal from the misery, you know, remove the snare and force the poachers to try something else somewhere else.
Sort of increasing your barrier to entry, as it were, make it as difficult as possible to make a success of snaring in the area, essentially.
That's right. Unprofitable, undesirable, you know, whatever, waste of your time.
Amazing.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned from time to time, of course, you will find an animal that has got a snare on its leg, around the neck, things like that. What do the Mambas do if they find an animal, you know, in, or that has been injured or still has the snare on them?
That used to be quite a frequent thing, unfortunately, in the beginning, before we got a handle on the snaring. So the modus operandi, there's a standard operational procedure for everything, an SOP, for absolutely everything. If they identify that animal, they stay with that animal. They call it in immediately to the operation center. Now, the nice thing is that they're tracked in real time, so we can see where they are. So they call into the op center, and they say, I've got a zebra, it's got a bangle or a necklace around its neck, and we get a veterinarian in, and we dart. Now, they have to be quite clever with their tracking abilities, because if you get too close to the animal, you keep herding, like little Bo Peep, herding her sheep all over the landscape, you know, and then it runs away and disappears into the thick bush. So they have to hang back and watch from a distance with binoculars, you know, and call us into the best place to say, okay, park your vehicle there, then you can dart it from there. And then we will repair that animal. And we have done some, you know, we've got some incredible wildlife vets in this country, probably the best in the world. And the amount of work that they've done repairing, and the hours that they've spent in the bush at night with spotlights, etc., repairing muscle flaps and tendons and what have you in lions, elephants, rhinos. You know, it's amazing the effort and the lengths that they will go to repair these things. And it's always a great success. I will always say to somebody, it's always worth trying. I promise you, we have had almost 100% success rate with an animal that's, we've removed the snare. And sometimes it looks like that thing is definitely going to die. You know, you can see the trachea, it's cut all the way down to the vertebra. All the muscle fibers, you know, all the muscle layers have gone through, the tendons, the works, and those vets repair that and let it go. And they don't have the luxury of having that patient come back for a checkup or a follow-up. They have that one chance.
Not.
you're not darting that animal again to take the stitches out, or to treat it for septicemia in the wound or something. You've got that one opportunity because you might never see him again.
No, Craig, you're so right. I mean, I've mentioned it a few times on the show and other times, all my years in the bush, the resilience of animals, big animals in Africa, with just even a little bit of treatment, if it's severe injury, even if with no treatment, the recovery and the way that from some things that they can recover from, it's just incredible. You mentioned a little bit about live tracking of the Mambas team. How is technology helping you guys, and the Black Mamba team succeed?
Russell, wow. Yeah, this is a critical part of our discussion tonight. We came in here thinking this was an arms race against the poachers. But, until we actually started talking to Paul and those guys at Africam, we realized that the arms race is actually a technology race. We've missed the bus. Yeah, the poacher's been using the same old deadbeat hunting rifle. It's so rusty now, and an old homemade silencer. They make them from maglites and shock absorbers and all kinds of things. So their weaponry hasn't evolved. But they've had the upper hand because they've been using cell phones, and pin drops and geolocation and whatever, even to sell the product at the end of the day. They're taking pictures, they sending it around, or using social media, whatever it might be. And yet we have always kept our field rangers on the back foot with technology, saying that we don't want them because of corruption. Corruption is a real issue. We can't make light of it. So a field ranger with a cell phone has the propensity to turn and start giving information out, either wittingly or unwittingly. He could just be innocently sending a picture to his family saying, hey, check the cool rhino, and then next thing you know, the rhino is shot or whatever. So, we realized that if there's two things here. I'm trying to build environmental patriotism in a community by employing young women with a multi-generational investment. Okay, but now I want to do that, but I'm taking them out of the community and I'm sticking them in the bush for 21 days at a time. So we say, Spencer, how the hell do you intend to do that when they're not even at home talking to their kids? So that's the one thing. The other thing is that I'm relying on the eyes and the ears of a human being in the field. When the sun goes down, we are quite inadequate, with our eyes and our ears. Yet the poachers have got landmarks and beacons and cell phones and, and communication and all that kind of thing. So why would we deny ourselves that? I want, first of all, my Mambas to be able to keep in touch with their children at home and say, this is mommy with a selfie on game drive. Look at me, I'm on patrol now. This is what I do. Check how cool those elephants are drinking at the water hole, Don't worry, baby, I'll be home soon, and all that kind of stuff. Because they're mothers, Then, on the other hand, I want them to be able to communicate directly with the operations center. I want sensors and cameras and things out there that give them the upper hand. It's a force multiplier again. I'm sitting in an observation position. I've got 3 of them sitting around me at the moment, with young women sitting in there all alone, with no spotlights, no nothing, because they must now be quiet, and wait for a poacher and see a poacher. What the heck, man? Imagine there's a camera on the landscape that is beaming straight into the ops room. There's people all over the world that are saying, hey, something came past. We get tired. After 4 hours of walking in this bush at 46 degrees Celsius, I promise you pooped, man. You're worn out, Then you still expect that person to sit there and keep their eyes and ears open and report everything that they see and give a proper direction and all that kind of thing. It's nonsense. When the sun goes down, we say, why didn't you see the tracks of these people? Well, I'm not a freaking vampire. I mean, have some mercy, please.
What a tough job. Exactly. Yeah.
It is insane. So without technology, we are doomed. And we have a full-time operations center with somebody sitting behind a computer, well, a whole bunch of computer screens. Plus, we've got all these people running around in the bush and what have you. And we want to buy bigger guns. I say, what are you going to shoot at? You can't see anything, why do you have a person sitting in the ops room 24 hours a day? When there's no technology backing them up? What are they doing? Are they playing cards? Are they watching YouTube videos? Let us put tools in these people's toolboxes. We're already paying them to be out there. Okay, let us maximize their potential on the landscape. Our objective, obviously, is to save the wildlife. We need technology, whether it's smoke detectors that tell us that a fire is coming through the landscape, rather than have somebody sitting in a tower expecting them to be awake for 24 hours and reporting a fire. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's get smoke detectors, let's get cameras, optics, something that can see in the night, something that somebody's watching somewhere in the world. Because of the different time zones, you can always find somebody that's prepared, when it's between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning, when everybody's so worn out and they need to get some sleep. It's going to be somebody in Canada or, in the United States, in Seattle or something, that's going to be alert and awake and watching. And we can bring that into the living rooms of people. So this is no longer Craig Spencer and a bunch of ghostly like field rangers running around in the bush. It's now a global effort to try and stop rhino poaching or poaching in general. That's what's so cool about it. My schools, when we had the Africam Samsung intervention, the schools were beaming these cameras through the classrooms, real time, with big screens. We put Wi-Fi in the rooms, and they could watch. And the lesson plans suddenly were designed around, what do you see walking past? Oh, what is that? Do you recognize that? What is that thing? It's an impala. Now, can anybody tell me what? Yes, Johnny, what is that? It's a female. How do you know it's a female? So on and so on. It's just, you've added so much value. It's not just helping the anti-poaching people, but it's just got this huge ripple effect. It's like dropping a stone into a pond, and those little ripples. We didn't even understand the value of this until the mamas went home with their little Samsung phones, and we found that they were logging in, and the family was sitting around and watching. So that's what mommy sees when she's out there. That's where mommy works.
That's amazing.
People underestimate how important it is to have technology.
Yeah.
We are not well suited to operate at nighttime. And when do poachers operate? At nighttime, because they know we are deficient. It doesn't matter how many FLIR night vision goggles and things you strap to your face. Give us the optics.
So you feel that the cameras out there, our live cameras, and that's helped to deter and stop some poaching activities? And on the opposite side, do you think sometimes poachers would use the cameras if they're going out live to help them? It's obviously a bit of a catch-22 in that regard.
It is. There is a double-edged sword here. So all those nice things that we spoke about before. So first of all, there's a bit of psychology behind this as well, where the ladies in the ops rooms, and myself even, we know that those areas are covered by cameras. So we can actually relax and focus on other areas. So the way we designed, I'm very a firm believer in using science to advise on what technology is best and what interventions are best. And then we measure the success of these things. So the cameras are up at water holes that we know are frequented by rhinos. We've also worked out that poachers need to find a sign of a rhino. It's like basic science. We have an hypothesis that a rhino is going to go and drink. I need to go and gather evidence to support my hypothesis. So I go there, look for tracks. Ha! There's very fresh tracks of a rhino. Then I pick up on those tracks. So those cameras are put in places that we know are the most parts of the landscape, which ironically is obviously going to be where the highest returns of animals coming and going all the time, So it's good for everyone at the end of the day. And then that leaves the rest of the landscape to us. We don't have to worry about those areas. I've got limited resources, just like any conservation agency has got. If I have to put teams of mambas at all of the water holes that I know that the rhinos are going to go and drink, and that's where the poachers are going to go, then I've run out of mambas to do the rest of the patrol work. Plus, they're going to be so worn out and tired the next day that I have to give them time to rest before I redeploy them, so on and so on. Cover the landscape with cameras where you can, where you need them, and then you can focus on the boundaries to stop the poachers from getting in. If one slips through the net, then I believe they are going to be picked up on the camera, and then we can pick up the trail and redeploy and carry on that SOP, on that standard operational procedure. The chances of a poacher logging in and looking, sure, I'm sure they will do it. They have no cooking clue where that camera is.
Yeah.
So there's a rhino in Africa, what I mean? Like on 60,000.
They won't know exactly where to go. Exactly. Yes.
Absolutely. And by the time they get there, that rhino's long gone. It's for him to say, "Oh, quick guys, I know where that is. Let's go." His deployment time is going to be 4 or 5 hours. So we've mitigated the risks, and we realize, we can't stop all the poaching. But at the moment, without the optics, those are blank patches on my map at nighttime. That is the problem. Putting somebody in an observation post and they hear a gunshot, boom. They've done their job, but it means a rhino is dead. I would much rather have eyes on that landscape that we can get there and prevent the rhino from dying. Yeah. We've got to get out of this. Yeah, Russell, we've got to get away from this old policing model of detection, pursuit, apprehension, and conviction. That model hasn't been very effective. I mean, we can't completely step away from that. But if that's all we've got in our toolbox, because that's how our legal system works, if that's all we've got in our toolbox, we've got to look back and say, you know, I was losing 1,200 rhinos in South Africa at the peak of the rhino poaching crisis. The amount of arrests that we made with special forces, Belgian Malinois, helicopters, night vision equipment, you know, all kinds of bizarre interventions. Our arrest rate was so low that we were losing over 50 rhinos for every arrest. Then if we take that statistic further and say, of those arrests, what was our conviction rate? You know, then it's frightening. And then we realize that that model cannot be our only brick in the wall. We need to be able to fall back on that from time to time, absolutely. But for heaven's sake, man, let us disrupt this landscape. Let's get eyes on this landscape and let's prevent these rhinos from dying. We cannot wait 50 rhinos per arrest and then a lower conviction rate than any other crime around here. But then there's no rhinos left. If that makes sense.
Let's recruit our viewers then. If they're watching on the cameras and something happens, you know, something that they see that they feel is a little bit odd, or, you know, especially something like an animal with a snare on it, what do you think they should do?
They must notify immediately. So there's two massive advantages to those cameras that you guys have got. First of all, their nighttime optics is incredible. So, you know, that's been a force. I mean, with all the other things that we've tried, that's a showstopper. And then the audio has been amazing. You know, when we did that initial trial here, within 24 hours, a gunshot was detected through a camera, through one of the viewers that notified us immediately, and we managed to follow up. Luckily, it didn't result in anything spectacular, but we wouldn't have known otherwise. So the audio is really important. And, you know, some of the people that were engaged with their initial thing were just playing this in the background whilst they're working in their offices, because the audio is so cool. You can hear frogs chirping and the elephants trumpeting and things splashing through the water and whatever. So it really added a nice office kind of environment. And then here comes a car, or there's voices, and then they would quickly notify us. So there was that option, boom, and it would come through immediately. At this camera, when, you know, we have 60 names in the cat's eye and, you know, whatever, the yellow-bellied sapsucker cam or whatever, you know, and then we know where that is. And then
we should have a yellow-bellied sapsucker cam. I'll look into that.
Everybody needs one of those. So it's got
Greg, awesome.
But the main, Russell, you know, we need to engage the global community in this. This can't be left up to a few wizened old people out here. And, you know, these poor ladies that we employ in the Black Mamas can't feel like they're doing this alone. They must feel like they're part of a global community. So this Africam intervention awakened the world. The Mambas are getting messages from people all over the world, you know, saying, you know, that was great, and it was so nice to see you on patrol, and, you know, so they feel like they're part of a bigger thing.
Incredible. Well, Craig, thank you for all those insights. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I feel like we could talk about this for days, and maybe we'll make some time again to have another chat and see how things are going with you and check in with you guys. But thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Russell. And thanks for asking some of those key questions as well. It's refreshing.
No, it's been a great pleasure having you, and keep up that incredible work, Craig. And we'll be keeping an eye on you guys out there. Best of luck to you and the team.
Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. My name is Nkateko Mzimba. I'm one of the Black Mambas anti-poaching unit. I'm a surgeon and a driver. So now, as we know that Mambas, they have to split into two teams early in the morning. So we decided to go for sweeping, because the sweeping is where we have to remove all the snares that Poachers has been put in our reserve. So in the middle of our sweeping, we found lots of tracks. These tracks, it's for early in the morning today. So as you see, it's fresh. So we have to do 360 to check if they put lots of snares or there is anything that's suspicious in our reserve. So as you see, this is a bush, lots of snares in the bush, lots of tracks in the bush. So us as the black members, we have to do this every time to chase out the poachers, because it's not good for the poachers to come and steal all those animals. And these animals, it's helping us because lots of our kids, they know these animals. So if the poachers, they continue killing, there will be no longer animals, and then which means we'll be running out of economy, because some of economies we got it from tourism. Thank you so much.